All right. Well, welcome to Mindset Monday. I'm going to dive right into the content for you. And if you happen to watch the replay of this, feel free to comment replay and feel free to answer the questions that I'm going to throw out today. That we're going to be talking about the idea of the bridge versus the gap and what do you focus on? This is the time of year. We're coming to the end of 2023, getting ready to start 2024, really in just a few weeks. And this is a great time. And this is the time that I personally have always used in my 35 plus years of ministry. I've used this time to focus on how I've led myself, how I've led my teams, how I've led my ministries. And I've done some real intensive uh, evaluation and prayer and research and looking at my numbers and all those kind of things so that I could start planning and setting some milestones, goals, whatever you want to call them, um, for the next year. The only way you're going to get better as a leader, the only way your ministry is going to improve is if you set healthy goals for yourself, healthy goals for your teams, healthy goals for your ministries. The thing is that when we do these things, this is where the struggle starts to appear for many, many leaders. This is why so many leaders abandon what they've set out to do even by February. I mean, all the goal researchers show how by the second week of February, most goals, resolutions, whatever, have been abandoned or sidetracked. Oftentimes, because of the gaps. Instead of looking at the bridges to get us to those places, we focus on the gaps. So let me ask the question to start us off is when you set a big goal, do you tend to focus more on the gap between where you are now and where you want to be, or on building the bridges or the bridge to get you from where you are to where you want to be? When we focus on the gaps, oftentimes we're looking at what we don't have. Um, we look at the challenges or the oppositions we feel like we're going to face. We assume reactions that might appear rather than what we know will appear. We focus on the gap. We focus last time, our last call. If you haven't watched that, you need to go back and watch on do we go positive or negative. This is often where the negatives will appear when we don't think we're negative. It'll show up if you tend to drift into the gap and go, well, I know my pastor won't approve this, or we won't have the budget money to do that, or I will never have enough volunteers to do that. Or the other church down the street could do that, but we can't do that. Oftentimes, we as leaders start looking at our scarcity rather than our abundance. And the scarcity is what fills or what creates gaps. It's in those gaps. And those gaps, instead of seeing them as an opportunity for growth where we can build on and build over, we tend to let those gaps stop us from moving forward because we set these grand and glorious, huge God-sized goals, and then we forget that we have a God who can totally bridge that gap. But we look at our own resources, we look at our own inadequacies, we look at things that we can do or we can't do in our skill sets, or like I said, we start comparing ourselves to other leaders, other ministries, and that gap feels like it's getting wider and wider and wider. So when you're setting goals for 2024 and beyond, do you tend to focus more on the gap or do you focus on the bridge? When you start thinking like a bridge builder, you start looking at, okay, what do I need foundationally to do this? Maybe you do need to do some work on yourself. Maybe this is the year you step into a coaching program uh, and get some extra help. I tell leaders so often, coaching, mentoring is something every leader needs. It's scary how many leaders I'm coming across that think, well, I can get coached when I go to a conference, or I can read a book or listen to a podcast. I used to do a lot of coaching from afar. It didn't help until I really started to say, okay, it's time for me to hire a coach, invest some funds. Yes, it was sacrificial. Yes, I paid out of pocket. Um, I didn't always have a church that could pay for it, so I found a way to get that myself into the room and into that program so that I could grow. You have to overcome the gap of believing that you're not worth investing in, or that it's too much, or that you don't have enough time. See, those are all excuses that create gaps. I don't have the funds. I don't have the resources. I don't have the time. I don't know how to do this or that. Or I'm not this way, that kind of leader, or that way. I used to say, well, I'd never be organized. I'd never use to-do lists and task lists. I'm not going to be organized. I'm too creative. I created gaps for myself. So I started determining that I was going to be a bridge builder first, and I was going to bridge those gaps. And so if I said, well, I know that I need to grow in this area, I want to lead myself well, then I have to build a bridge for it. So what foundation do I need? Okay, I need some funds. Well, where am I going to get those funds? Where am I willing to sacrifice, give up my coffee for a couple of months, or eating out for a couple of months, or whatever for a couple of months? And boom, I've got the money. It's amazing how we can find funds when we truly value something. So if you're making the excuse I don't have, ask yourself, why do I say that? And have I created a gap? Or am I willing to sacrifice that thing in order to build a foundation, to build the bridge, to get from somewhere to where you want to be? Because you can sit here a year from now and we could have this conversation in December of 2024, looking at December of or January 2025, and you could still be in the same spot. And how sad would that be? Let me ask you another question. How can focusing too much on the gap become demotivating or overwhelming? Because here's another reason. Sometimes leaders in their ministries and in leading their teams feel overwhelmed. And one of the reasons, when we start drilling down into what's causing the overwhelm, it's because they're focused on this gap. They're focused on their lack, what they don't have. And they've created even a bigger gap because they say no one wants to volunteer. But when we truly drill down to how many people have you talked to personally? How many of you had a face to face? How have you asked them? What did you ask them to do? And for how long? And what specifically? Um, a a lot of times it's the ask. A lot of times it's how we ask that creates that problem. So, and then we've created the lack. We've created the scarcity of volunteers. So if you sit there and you keep focusing during this season on what you don't have, or what you're struggling with, or what you're fearful of, or what you're worried about, you're going to make that gap bigger. And it's going to either cause you to say, I give up, I quit, I don't want to do this, or this is too overwhelming. I'll figure out something else, or I'm just going to go pick something else easier to focus on. Third question I want to ask, and I want you to consider: how might focusing on the bridge impact you daily with your actions and your priorities? So if you took where you are now in your ministry, or where you are yourself, or where you're leading your teams, and think about where you want to go, are you focusing on how you're going to get there, that bridge? And if you are, how is that impacting what you choose to do every day as your priorities? And what actions are you going to take? One of the things that we work on when I'm coaching a leader is, how do we break down a big goal into smaller, more manageable steps? Because a leader thinks in steps, not leaps and bounds, jumps. We often find ourselves overwhelmed because we try to jump the gap rather than taking one step at a time. We have to focus on the right things, and we have to lay a foundation that's correct. You can't build a solid bridge without a good foundation. A good foundation will come by laying multiple little steps. And if you're consistent over time, you will find yourself across that gap in faster time than you ever imagined. So here's some action steps for you today that I think will really help you as you think down through the gaps versus the bridges. Take the tasks, take the goals that you're looking at for 2024 and work backwards. Calendar them backwards in small bite-sized steps. Create some fun milestones along the way. And the reason why I say fun milestones is because when you're having fun doing what you do, it keeps your brain in a positive place so that you don't focus on the wrong things. So reward yourself, give yourself some challenges, set some challenging goals, set some stretching time periods that you know you're going to have to burst and do a sprint. But then on the other side of that, there's a reward, there's some fun for you and your team. And then begin to focus on the small steps daily. Build consistency, build a healthy, sustainable pace, a rhythm that you can do. So learn to plan your days based off of your long-term goals. Set up your batching of your tasks to do that. And really truly start to visualize that bridge being built step by step, that this action is going to create some momentum. That momentum is going to lead you to the next action. That action is going to create momentum and lead you to the next action. And again, pretty soon, the beams of the bridge are across the gap. Here's the other part. Part of the reason why we talk about Mindset Monday is that we have to catch our negative thoughts. And instead of looking at what we didn't get done, let's focus on what we did get done. At the end of every day, you should evaluate what you did for that day. You find out where your time wasters are and eliminate some of those things. Get off social media, set up your focused work schedule so that you're focusing and doing deep focus for an hour or two and then take a break. But at the end of the day, shift your mindset to not what you didn't get done, but what progress did you make? And then celebrate those with your team and with others. Celebrate it in our Facebook group. It's important that we all think about these kind of things. You want to focus on the journey, not the destination, because true joy is found in finishing well. I want to challenge all of us to finish well, to lead ourselves well in 2024, to lead our teams well in 2024, and to lead our ministries to make greater kingdom impact in 2024. All right, that's going to wrap up our conversation. We're going to continue off of this recording to chat. So hope that you can join us again for another Mindset Monday conversation that we get to do here in the Kid Ministry Collective community. God bless you. Thanks again for watching the replay. Would love to hear your comments and questions. I'll be happy to answer more of those for you at any time. So God bless. Thanks a lot. We'll see you again soon.